Hello fellow AGD coders, and welcome to another video. Hope you're all doing well. And today we're going to look at something that I'm calling pre-shifted animation. And this is something that occurred to me when I was messing about with this Manic Miner sprite here, thinking about how it was animated in the original game. And I realized that it actually used a form of pre-shifting, but that each image was different to the next, so that as well as pre-shifting, it was also animating at the same time. And this is not something that AGD does, but it is possible for us to do it with AGD. And I'm going to show you how today. So as you can see here, I've got a fully animated Miner Willy running around, and there are 4 frames to the left and 4 frames to the right. And normally in AGD that would be hard coded in. If you have a look though, you'll see that what I've actually got here is just a single sprite. So of course the question is, how did I do that? Well, basically what I do is when the game is ready to load, when the game is ready to run, I basically load some new animation frames over the pre-shifted ones. So those of you that know a little more about AGD will know that each sprite actually is a set of 4 images. The first image is the one that you can see when you're designing, but then there are another 3 which are shifted by 2 pixels, 4 pixels and 6. This is what makes the animation run very quickly and very smoothly, but it's also what takes up quite a bit of memory, especially once you start adding in animation frames. So with this method, what we'll do is we'll actually load in a pre-created set of pre-shifted sprites, and then we'll be able to have animation happening at the same time as the pre-shifting rather than separately. And that means that for horizontal movement at least, it means that we can save quite a bit of memory, because rather than 128 bytes for 1 frame, we can have 128 bytes for 4 frames, which is going to make quite a big difference. Okay, so let's take a look a little bit closer at exactly how we achieve this. So as you can see here, what's happened is this is what you would expect with only 1 frame. You can see that I've only got well, there's no animation at all. It's just a single static image like the one that you just saw. However, if I now load in a binary file, if I go to here, just to confirm, as you can see, I'll check the address where I need to load it in, and so that tells me where. And now I'll load in a binary file like so. So this is actually in-game, but we'll try that first of all. Let's load that in, and this is one that I've made earlier. So there it is, and I'll show you how to make that a little bit later in this video. And yeah, so I'll load it in straight over the top, and this is going to replace the previous pre-shifted sprites. Now if I do this in the middle of the game, it is going to cause a little bit of screen corruption potentially, but as you can see in this case, it hasn't caused any problems. And so it's basically something that we do before we saved our final game off, if you like. So what you do is you design your game, do everything in the editor, then right at the end, because as you can see here, the sprites are reshifted by the editor. But if you save them off right at the end, before you make your final game, like you finalize the game, then it will basically work without any problem. And as you can see here, if I load it back in at this point and then run the game, it will work. So that means that you can save the game, and it will run as a standalone with those frames pre-installed, if you like. So essentially what this means is that for your horizontal sprites, you can create a set of images like this, and then basically load them in at the end of when you finished your game, save it off, and they will actually work, and you will save that part of the memory, and you'll get the animation frames for a quarter of the memory that you would have previously. So let's take a look then. Here I've got the set of frames, and we have to do a little bit of sprite manipulation. We're going to have to shift these so that they look the way that they do in AGD. So as you can see, I've got 4 frames here, one's to the left and to the right. So what I'm going to do basically is grab that and just shift that one across by 2 pixels, and this one I have to shift across by 4 pixels. And as you can see, once it goes over the square there, you can see I've got a little bit of an area there that's overlapping, so I'm going to have to copy that part, and I'll just grab that over to the left hand side. So I'll take that, just grab that carefully, and I've got to move it over to the left hand side here, so it'll be exactly 16 pixels back that way. So the image, as you can see, we're basically creating a pre-shifted image. Now this Minor Willy sprite's fairly narrow, so it doesn't cause a huge problem, but with this one, as you can see, it's definitely going to overlap, because this one has to be shifted to the right by 6 pixels. And by doing this, we're kind of tricking AGD. Basically, we're creating our own pre-shifted sprites, but we are giving each one a different image. So I just have to grab the bit that overlapped and put it over there like that. Okay, so with that, we now have our pre-shifted sprites, and they should now work within AGD. But before we do that, I do need to put them in the right order, because I've just realized that the sprite facing the right is sprite 0 and this is sprite 1. So I'll just drop that down, that will be fine, and then we can highlight the whole thing. So this will be all the way across. It's 8 chars there by 4 total, so each one is 2 by 2 obviously. And we then go to export. I've done this in previous videos. Save it as a binary here, and I've already made a demo before, but we'll overwrite it, and it should be block type data and 16 by 16 with no attributes, and that's the format, as most of you will know, that you use to import into AGD. So that's basically our file, and as you can see here, we'll do one more demo just to show you it working. There is the left and right with no sprites. And if I now load this binary in here, not on the sprite page, but on the main menu, and then load it in here like this. So imagine this is my game finished, and I'm now adding the animation frames. So obviously if you've got a lot of frames, you might want to make an Excel sheet with a list, but then it's just a kind of finalization process. And as you can see there, I've added the frames and they're working, and we're getting basically, in that case, 6 extra frames of animation for no additional cost in terms of the memory. And as you can see there, it's gone back to the previous design. I think what I'll do is I'll actually show you now that it will work if we save it off as a tap file, and then it'll actually run as a real game. So we'll load it back in, and now we'll clear a tape, and we'll create a tape file. So first of all, let's just clear it, and then we'll choose save game here. As per normal, when you're making your own game, this is what you would do. So obviously you've loaded that binary in just before you're going to make your final game. We'll create a basic loader, and then I'll reset the emulator. Oh, of course I have to write the tape first. We'll write it to that one there. And now I'll reset the emulator, like so, just to show you. And if I now use the tape loader, you'll see this will load in the game that I've just made, and as you can see, it's working, and it does have the frames, and they have worked perfectly, and they would be in your final game. So you might not see them in your testing, but once your game is ready and you know that it's worked, it's pretty easy to do that. Okay, so because this is a little bit fiddly, I thought I'd show you one more example. And here I've taken a sprite from Ooze by Andy Johns. Hello Andy, thanks for letting me use this sprite. And I'll show you how you can take a sprite like this in your original AGD and export it to ZX Paint, and then change it and shift it yourself, and then put it back in. So what I'm going to do here, I've shown you before how to make a sprite sheet, but this is another method that you can use. What you can do is you can take the image, the frame, copy it, because AGDX lets you copy from sprite to object, copy it as an object, and make a copy of the frames that you want, each one as an object. So I'll go through here one by one, going to the sprite image and then taking a copy here like this, and then going to the object and then making a new object and pasting it in here. And obviously because I've got left and right here, I only need to get one copy. I can flip it quite easily within ZX Paintbrush. And so I'll just take these 4 images there, and then what I'm going to do is basically use the object placement code here, which lets you put objects and test them, and I'm going to put a copy of each of these onto the screen. So first of all at 0, then at 8, 16, and then at 24 here, just moving across, and this is going to basically print on screen for me the 4 frames that I need. And the reason that that's useful, as I'm sure most of you will have figured out, is that that is then when I run the game, there they are, and now I can just press save, and I can save off a screen file, and that will allow me to take the copies that I've made and load them into ZX Paint. Obviously, as I said, there is a video I've shown where you can do a sprite sheet. If you've got a lot of sprites, then that method's quicker. But if you've only got 4 images like this, for example, then this copy and paste method is quite a good way of getting images out and into ZX Paintbrush. So that's quite a good little method. So there we've got our 4 images, and of course we're going to have to make another set of 4 for the movement to the left. Obviously with Ooze, any of you that have played it, it's a very good game. I certainly recommend it. The character also has a second left and right when it's crawling on the ceiling rather than the floor. So you could also use this method to do that, but I'm just going to use it for the left and right on the floor for now. So I'm going to move it down because I'm going to need a bit of space to make our flipped copies. So I'll take this image and we'll flip it like so. But of course we actually need to put these back in the correct order now, because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and this has now become 3, 2, 1, 0. So they're flipped, but we've flipped the order as well as the pixels. So that one matches to this one, and this one matches to this one. ZX Paintbrush has a very useful grab feature, if you don't know about it, which allows you to grab in groups of 8 or even 16 pixels. So that's very easy for grabbing sprites like this and copying them and moving them about like that. So that's our set, similar to the Minor Willy set that we had. And what we're going to do now is make a bit of workspace. I'll just put these out of the way for a minute, because if I'm going to shift these, then there's going to be a lot of overlap, because these images are properly 16 by 16, not nearly as narrow as the Minor Willy one. So I'll take a copy, I'll shift it across 2, and then as you can see here, I'm going to have to grab those pixels there, just the 2, and drag them over and put them over here. So I'm basically, as we saw in the previous example, I'm creating a pre-shifted animation here. So the next one, we have to do the same thing for the next frame of animation, which is these. So I'll grab these. Oops, I'll just shift over to the easy grab, and obviously you'll have to flip between them, because with the pre-shift you need to divide. You're dividing a block. So I'll now switch back again to pixel mode, and I've got to shift this one, this time by 4 pixels, and then I've got to grab, oops, no, go back and change to pixel by pixel. Yeah, there we go. So grab these pixels that have overlapped and just move them over here like so, and just one more to do. I have been thinking about the possibility of exporting all the pre-shifted images, and that would obviously be easier. And some of you may have seen on the Facebook page that I did post a little demo about shifting the sprites manually, and obviously that would be quite helpful with this, because we could then potentially create a set of objects with shifted images, and that would also save a bit of time for this method. I'll just grab that there, and I'll move it over. Yeah, so if I hadn't said before, the other thing to bear in mind is that this will only work with horizontal images because it's pre-shifted to the left and right. There's no shifting up and down. That's the way that the Spectrum screens work. So moving up and down is easy, and you don't need to use shifting. But yeah, I got that one wrong there. I made a slight mistake. So make sure you get it exactly right. I've had to do that a second time, but we don't need to worry about that stray pixel. That's not even in the way. So let's just yeah, we'll shift over and we'll grab it. So that's our full set, and we'll now do exactly as we did before. We'll save a copy, export it rather, over here. We'll give it a name and save it off. We'll just call it ooze shift maybe, and save that off. And that animation is then ready to load into AGD. As I said, remember 16 by 16 block format, no attributes. That's our pixel data, and we're not going to load this into the sprite editor. We're going to load it, as I said, into the game before we run it. So the first thing I'm going to do then is just delete all these objects, and then I'm going to delete all of these animation frames. And for every frame that I delete, I'm going to be saving 128 bytes. So already just with this small example, we're going to save about 700 bytes. And once you start applying that to other horizontally moving animations, you're going to find you're going to save probably anything up to 2 or 3K of memory by using this method. So as you can see here, we've got no animation there. And let's just check the memory location where to load it in, and there we go. So it's still in the same place, and all we have to do then is load into the memory at the address that we specified. And obviously this would be at the end of our process of making a game, putting the animations in at the end. And if we run it now, as you'll see, it's worked exactly as we hoped it would, and we've got 4 frames of animation in both directions, and we've only used 32 bytes per frame rather than 128, so it's a huge saving. It does have 1 or 2 disadvantages, of course. You do have to load the binary in. As soon as you go to the editor, it all gets wiped out. So as you can see here, once I've gone back, it's gone. So you load it in and then you save your game, and you run it, you finalize it. That's one disadvantage. Other disadvantage is that it only works with horizontal movement, as you've seen. And the final thing is that it's quite restrictive in terms of the animation itself, in the sense that you don't really have any control. It's all dependent on the sprite's position on screen. But it does work very well. It's very effective for horizontal movement of sprites, anything like enemies on platforms, or perhaps flying enemies in a shoot 'em up horizontally, that kind of thing. It's going to save a lot of memory, anything up to 3 or 4K maybe. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another video fairly soon, hopefully. In the meantime, keep enjoying AGD, keep enjoying the Spectrum, and as always, happy coding. Thanks a lot. Bye.